All right, in this video, we are going to talk about specifically demand. We're going to continue our conversation on markets, but we're going to look at the demand side of the market, the consumer side, the household side of the market. And specifically in this video, we're going to talk about the law of demand and why the demand curve is shaped the way it is. So to do that, let's take a look at our slideshow presentation. And so in looking at demand, let's just identify a few topics first. We have demand, quantity demanded, which is just going to give you how much quantity of a good buyers are going to want to purchase at a given price. And this relationship between price and quantity demanded can be represented between a demand schedule and a demand curve. Typically, when we draw a graph of demand, we're representing it using a demand curve. Now, you can also represent it with a demand schedule, which is just a table where you have your quantity in one column and then your associated price in the next column, where the price will tell you how much quantity is demanded at that price. So the key thing I want you to take away from what demand is demand is a relationship. You know, anytime you have a function or like a graph, something that has two variables, it's a representation of a relationship. And so what we're representing with the demand curve is the relationship between how much people want to buy at a given price. So the quantity demanded and the price. And so when we represent demand, we represent it, again, using either a graph, where this is your demand curve, or a demand schedule, where you have the price, what a price could be, and what the quantity demanded would be at that price. Now, how do we find these values? How do we determine what this relationship is? Why is this relationship such that as the price goes up, quantity demanded decreases? Well, to answer that question, we can use something we learned last week involving optimization. So let's take a look at our pizza example from last week. So if we look at how many pizzas should we consume? Well, and let's just so not to be confused, we're just going to take a look at the marginal graph. So we'll get rid of this total graph here. So when we take a look at what the optimal amount of pizza would be, well, we found that it's about 4.5 slices. If you could buy a half slice, the optimal amount would be 4.5 slices. But typically, because we can't consume half slices, we only buy 4. Well, that's assuming that the price is equal to 3. So because we're in a perfectly competitive market, the price faced by consumers of pizza, because we're in a perfectly competitive market, is not going to change. It's constant. Whether that consumer purchases 1 slice, 2 slices, 20 slices, it doesn't matter. They can't influence the price. So essentially, the price to the consumer of the piece of pizza is going to be equal to their marginal cost, which in this case is $3. And because we're in a perfectly competitive market, it's constant. It's constant at $3. So you don't buy more. It's not like the more you buy, the bigger discount you get. We're not saying that here. We're making the assumption that the price stays constant. And the reason I want to make that assumption is because it makes things a little bit easier to understand. such as what would happen if the price increased. Well, if the price goes up, let's say the price increases to $5. So the price, we'll call this P2, is again going to be equal to the marginal cost. We'll call it just marginal cost 2, just the second marginal cost. And it goes up to $5. Well, what's going to happen? Well, your marginal cost and your price is now going to be greater. It's now going to increase. Okay? This price increased. So what rationally should happen? Well, before we were consuming at 4.5 slices, but now because the price and the marginal cost has gone up, the amount that's going to be consumed is something less, like 3.5 slices. So what ends up happening, because we have these diminishing returns, which leads to this downward sloping marginal benefit curve, then as the price increases, the consumer is going to decrease their quantity demanded. So what's happening? Essentially the law of demand. The law of demand states that as price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. And so that's exactly what we see here, because here we have our price increase. Our price goes from $3 to $5. Call that like step 1. In fact, I'll do it in a different color. Call that like our step 1. Well, that's the price increase. What that's done is raise the marginal cost. When the marginal cost of doing an activity increases, people do less of that activity. In this case, it's consuming pizza. And so because the marginal cost has gone up and the thing that they're doing is consuming pizza, the quantity demanded, as measured by what's on this x-axis, this is the second piece of the law of demand. So price has gone up, driven up the marginal cost, which drives down the quantity consumed of pizza because it's now more costly to do so. And so your marginal cost, your marginal benefit is going to have to be now higher for you to want to consume that piece of pizza. Well, for this fourth piece of pizza, your marginal benefit is only $4. Well, with the cost being $5, it doesn't make sense to consume that fourth piece of pizza. The benefit of that fourth piece of pizza is less than, you can see it graphically, is less than the marginal cost. So you don't consume it. You only consume up to 3.5 slices of pizza. So this is why we have this law of demand, and this is why the demand curve is downward sloping from a micro standpoint, from like an individual decision maker standpoint. From the individual consumer, they're going to consume less at higher prices. On the macro level, if it's all pizza being consumed, well, if the price goes up, you're going to have some people that don't value pizza at $5. They value pizza slices. They don't really like pizza that much. Maybe they only value it at $3 for their first slice. Well, those people are going to completely drop out of the market. So this works, this law of demand works on both the micro level and on the macro level. In the next video, we'll talk about the relationship between price and quantity supplied, or the supply curve and the law of supply. And similarly, we'll explain why as price increases, quantity supplied also increases. Right? So that's in the next video.